Hey everyone, welcome back to some new malicious compliance stories. I hope you had a great day. If you would like to support the channel, please press the like button, it really helps. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to get informed about new videos. And now let's start with the first story, shall we? The first story is called Exactly As She Wants. I'm a secretary for a medical facility that funds other medical institutions. I'm also responsible for their travel to conventions and conferences. There's a very large, very highly attended conference held each year in which our medical professional staff is invited as presenters. One such Karen as presenter just has to be incredibly difficult, as she feels she's above us drags and never let us forget it. As a presenter, they are given certain hotels that are reserved for them at a reduced rate. However, most are nowhere near the convention site and they end up paying a huge amount of money to cabs. This story is from the before Uber times. I set up the travel for at least 10 folks when I realized that by a loophole I can book them into the hotel where the conference is held. So I do that instead of allowing the coordinators to book them in heaven knows where at the last minute, which they are prone to do. Karen comes up to me and demands that I only book her into the hotels listed by the conference coordinators. If I don't, she will have me written up, so that's what I did. The day before they all leave for the conference, which was clean across the country on the west coast, Karen found out she was the only one not booked in the conference hotel. She was 9 miles away near the airport and no, there were no more rooms available at the conference hotel. She was hopping mad and stormed to my desk, screaming about my putting her in a faraway 2-star hotel. I looked at her and calmly stated that she was in one of the 3 hotels the coordinators reserved for her. I reminded her that she instructed me to only select those hotels and nothing else. She ended up spending more than $70 in cab fare to and from the hotel to the venue, while everyone else only had to go downstairs from their hotel rooms. She almost missed giving her presentation because she was late. After that, when I booked everyone for a trip, Karen no longer demanded I give her special treatment and let me use my judgment when booking hotels. The next story is called My House, My Rules. A few years ago, my dad was moving out of his house and in with his parents due to some health problems with my grandma. This was over the summer break and I was just out of high school at the time, about to go into college. So I had absolutely nothing to do all summer as I waited to move out of state. My dad never was and still isn't super organized. I, on the other hand, alphabetize my own bookshelf with a full system type A about keeping things in order. Call me weird, but I really enjoy reorganizing things and cleaning, it just hits that button for me. So, being that he had about 2 months until he closed on the house, I just started to pack up some of the house for him. The basement was a disaster and I had wanted to tear it up for years. So within the first day, I had made a significant dent in the basement, which ended up being a very involved process. I didn't realize when we had moved in that a lot of the stuff from our old house was still packed haphazardly because my brother and I were too young to really help. So I went through the process of unpacking the still packed boxes from house 1, labeling the boxes the way I wanted to, and then repacking those boxes appropriately. After about 3 days of this, I get about 50% done, including cleaning and packing my room and some of the garage. And here's the build up to the malicious compliance. My dad comes down to help me, all good with me. I start explaining where things go and my dad wants to change it. I resist, explaining that I already have a system and that I have been doing the bulk of the packing. So he should probably just go with me on this one, which is when he hits me with my house, my rules. So I relent because I know what will happen. Anyone that's really type A will agree with me that the only thing more frustrating than things being chaotic and out of order is things that are slightly out of order. Which is what I knew would happen. Regardless of the fight Dad and I had, he ended up almost following the system. Mostly things that belong in the labeled boxes went where they were supposed to, except for a few very important odds and ends that got put, well, not where they were supposed to. I noticed this, but because of my house, my rules, clearly he has a plan, so I don't say anything. I knew the payoff was going to be a slow burn, and it came several months later when I was in school across the country and unable to help. Dad calls me one day very flustered because he can't find something he needed. He had been in the storage unit he rented in my hometown for the better part of 3 hours looking. Now the storage unit got packed horribly by the moving crew. I have been in there a few times after this and I feared for my safety. It's a legitimate labyrinth and a nightmare to get through, not to mention this was midsummer and there was no AC. So Dad is mad on the phone asking me where it is, and I asked him if it's in the box I labeled in big red Sharpie important stuff. He says no and I smile a bit. Then he says, well, you were in charge of packing all of this stuff and now I can't find it. That's when I calmly reminded him of the blowout fight we had over this exact issue and how he commandeered my operation afterward. I told him that if I was actually in charge, it would be in that box. He hung up on me after that. I loved my dad and I had no problem helping him out. We laugh about it today. But I can't say I didn't get a good chuckle at the thought of him sweating and cursing, climbing around in that storage unit. He recently found another place to live now that my grandparents have more in-home assistance and I've already worked out that I'm gonna come help him move. And we already agreed that I am in charge this time. The last story is called I Like Him. This happened to one of the older guys at my workplace who was just about to retire as I was just joining the company. We were intended to overlap only by a few months, but luckily for me I worked with him for a couple of years. The company was making test equipment, mostly in the avionics field. We made a test system for an old inertial navigation system. The inertial system tester basically moves the sensor through all three axes in precise order, speeds and combinations, and verifies that it reads correctly. The test system was ancient. I mean really ancient, even for the 1980s. It had a magnetic core memory, front panel programming, paper tape loader and a huge hard disk that was a massive metal plate but held about 1 kilobyte. Our hero, who we will call Dave, was the only person in the company who knew how this thing really worked, and he had worked on it for decades. The Air Force was replacing the navigation system with a new one, and so the test systems would be scrapped. Dave had less than 2 years to go before retirement, and so he was on a bit of a shaky pack when the project ended. Dave was also a stereotypical engineer, very good at his job, low social skills and brutally honest. He had made enemies. But because the company needed him for the IST and he knew everyone who dealt with the system from our company to the various air bases and air forces and civilians who used the system, they tolerated his manner. Dave was often called out to bases around the world to help them diagnose a problem. He was very good at his job and the air forces respected him for it. Due to the imminent scrapping of the inertial guidance system, Dave was offered early retirement and took it. As the contract was in its last days, the project store was emptied of stacks of fan-fold paper, paper tape and other bits of useless rubbish. Due to his connections, Dave knew that the replacement system was delayed by a year and so the IST service life was going to be extended. Dave knew this before the company did. Dave also knew that some component suppliers who were contracted to support the IST had stopped production and scrapped the old manufacturing kit. This meant that there would be a refurb contract coming to allow the IST to use modern disks to replace the obsolete dinner plate disks. Dave knew this, but Dave retired anyway. That was the malicious compliance. A few weeks later, a contract request came through, requesting that we modify the system tester to use a more modern technology and support the system for another year with options to renew the contract annually. As it was a simple add-on contract, it was agreed with little oversight. Then the panic set in. Nobody knew how to code the system. It was written in Fortran and a 1960s version at that, and also some machine code for an ancient processor that nobody had ever used. The majority of us had never seen the spider web that was a magnetic core memory. We didn't know where the source code had been archived and we didn't have a paper tape punching machine. We eventually found a printout of the source code with some handwritten annotations and had no clue if that was the installed software version or not. The config control department did not care about a 60s era system that had remained unchanged for over a decade and they didn't know much about it. But Dave knew, and Dave was waiting for the phone call to ask. Dave agreed to come back part-time as a contractor at a very high hourly rate for the duration of the contract. The contract was extended another 6 months sometime after, taking Dave almost to his retirement date, but with a huge amount of money in his last 18 months. I like Dave, he fought me a lot. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, bye bye.